a lot of the great learnings that we've done. But these are the areas that you'll hear Corwell and Whirlpool talk about really wanting to see action around. So we take a step back. Why did we feel the need to kind of say, okay, we've had a great 10 years, what's next? It really is about organizing ourselves for success. So currently we have a lot of amazing, but pretty independent, and I think we would all admit in some cases overlapping organizations. And that means we're not as effective as we could be collectively. So what we want to push for here is interdependent but complementary organizations with a higher effectivity. We want every organization understanding what's our lane, what are we really good at, what are we responsible for, and then cheering on the others as they're accomplishing tasks headed in the same direction. Sounds simple, I think it's some work we need to do. So our goal is an aligned framework that outline the key initiatives in these two areas of housing and riverfront development across the organizations and municipalities in this room. That framework should be governed by the individual boards of those organizations, but progress measured on a quarterly basis for a number of reasons, including helping break down barriers on these areas. So really, simply said, it's an aligned list of targeted outcomes so everyone understands what role you play and how to best get there and who you're working with on these key objectives. So here's an example. I ask you please not to read too much into it. It's just an example of a very simple framework that we're looking at. So Natalie and I both serve on the executive committee of Cornerstone Alliance. We're obviously going through a leadership transition there. We're literally in the middle of CEO interviews. We've got candidates coming in early next week and hope to close out that process. But we saw the need to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, let's get Cornerstone figured out. Admittedly, there's been a lack of direction in some instances. We have a really great team there. We need to make sure we're leveraging that team in the best possible way. So we said, okay, as an executive committee and a board, let's pick the top 5 initiatives that Cornerstone is going to be focused on. Let's say, what are those deliverables? Who are we working with on those initiatives? What are the milestones in 12 months, 6 months? What's our current status? And for Cornerstone, we want to make sure we're keeping an eye on what economic development pillar this is focused on, so that at a glance, as a board, we can say, yep, this is the lane we've chosen to operate in. Or, no, why do we have a bunch of blue on there if that's not really our focus? So again, just a simple example. And what we would encourage is other organizations to think about some version of this framework. We're not going to monitor it. It's up to your boards to govern that. But we think this can be effective. And we want to put it in place. And the starting point will be today on riverfront development across all applicable entities, and a similar one for housing. So again, a very simple framework. What are the top 7 to 10 initiatives that we need to make happen collectively in order to drive progress on riverfront development? Who's the lead organization? Who's going to support that? What are the deliverables? What's the status? And then I'll go to on the next slide, how do we keep track of that? And that's where we see, going back to that community development arm, potentially within Cornerstone Alliance, to really help manage that effort from an oversight perspective, not a governance, but an oversight, that project integrator, project manager piece, to make sure things are moving and that collectively we're breaking down barriers as we go forward. So with that, potentially we put in place a governance structure with Natalie, myself, and I&M Power as kind of the major funders in the community, sitting down with board chairs and the leaders of the organization to review progress maybe 3 times a year on riverfront development and housing. And this is about making sure future funding can be committed based on sufficient progress against these areas, and to really make sure everybody's lining up and helping us understand, where can we help? Where do you have barriers? Who do you need to work with? Who's not coming to the party? That sort of thing. But also, how can we go get these big grants? How can we do the things that we know are possible within the community if we all work together? So thrown a lot at you, and it's not totally nailed down. So happy to take input, and I'll ask Natalie to share her comments here. But this is where we're headed. It's a pretty simple framework if you think about it. I think it can add a lot of value as we go forward and have a bunch of arrows pointed in the same direction. So Natalie.
Thank you, Pam. I think you covered everything extremely well. You know, I've been on the Cornerstone board for a couple of years now, and as I've transitioned into filling Lauren's role, I've been able to meet a lot of you and learn that there's so much strategic direction, interest, and power within our community that it really helps spark the consideration of what does Cornerstone bring to this community and how can we be the most impactful as we all work together and obviously achieve the goal that we all desire is having an exceptional community. And there's a lot of areas that we need to build on and focus on, but collectively, we can really do this strongly and at a cadence that I think we all aspire and desire to achieve. So Lauren would have loved to have been here today to extend his support for the work that's happened in the SLC over the last 10 years and to all of you, but he is off fulfilling his retirement bucket list. So
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate that. We're going to transition here. John, I think, is going to cover the tabletop exercise and what the next steps are. Again, just ask you to bring all your ideas, your 10 years of thoughts around this. There's been so much great work around riverfront and also housing. We're going to hear a little bit more about that to provoke some more thoughts before we go into the exercise. But really, it's our opportunity with all of you in the same room to really kickstart this in a really big way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. So to move towards action, move towards engagement, Mr. Mayor, how are you? Good to see you this morning. I think it is an opportunity for us to look at some places that have been highly successful in cascading all the different organizational structures together, working cooperatively with the public-private partnerships that exist. And there's none better in the state of Michigan to give some of that detail and update than Ryan Kilpatrick. He is at the tip of the spear when it comes to seeing amazing things happen in municipalities across Michigan. He knows best how to cascade all of these different organizational structures and to bring people together under the idea of housing. So with some aspiration as we move towards this first tabletop exercise, we're going to hear from Ryan.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me here today. So I was the founding executive director of Housing Next. I now run a small consultancy that is focused on strategic planning for housing and economic development. We operate across the state, so we're working with Housing North up in Traverse City, still supporting Housing Next in West Michigan. And then we've got client communities kind of all over West Michigan, and we're inching over to the east side of the state as well. So what I want to talk about briefly today is some of the work that we have been successful at instigating in West Michigan, Kent and Ottawa counties specifically. We're expanding into Muskegon and Allegan counties slowly. But I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of our failures. So I don't want to give the impression that everything we did was always great. We made plenty of mistakes. We had a couple of years during COVID where we were lucky we had stacked some dominoes up in advance because things got really hard. So I'll give you a little bit of insight into some of those things, but hopefully we'll talk more during the tabletop exercise. So really what we understood when we founded Housing Next was that we had a shortage of available housing. We had a shortage of affordable housing, and it was showing up in people's daily lives. It was impacting our businesses. It was impacting our school districts, and it was impacting a lot of families across the region. But what we didn't know was what was below the surface, right? And so the United Way of Greater Ottawa County, along with the Community Foundation, and some other local business leaders got together and said, hey, we really need to unpack this. We need to understand what's below the surface and begin to poke at what are those structural issues that are creating those events that we see and we don't like, and how do we begin to unpack those and hopefully disassemble or dissolve them. And so we had a lot of conversation within that collective impact model of community engagement. We brought nonprofits to the table, we brought business to the table, we brought philanthropy and government to the table, and mostly got alignment, but we didn't as necessarily coalesce around particular projects, right? Because what we found was we still had siloed sectors in our community that said, oh, we really have to focus on homelessness, and if we don't solve homelessness, then we can't solve anything else. And we had other people talking about talent attraction and retention. And if we didn't solve for that, then we wouldn't have enough growth in the community. And we couldn't even think about homelessness until we were talking about talent attraction and retention. And so what we decided was those conversations needed to continue, but we also needed to start getting work done. And so what we really wanted to do was focus on who was the core leadership that was going to be necessary in order to get impactful projects in the community done to build trust and to build momentum, recognizing that we weren't going to solve all of the issues that were on the table, and that every project we did wasn't going to satisfy all of our constituent stakeholders at the table. But that what we were going to do is bring the right people into the conversation so that we had voices of lived experience from across the continuum, and that we were recognizing and naming the things that we weren't solving with each project, just as much as we were recognizing and naming the things that we were solving. So that we weren't giving anybody the impression that, oh, don't look behind the curtain. Hey, everything we're doing is great. It's all magic. What we were doing is saying, this is what we can achieve this year or in this quarter. We know there are other issues that we also need to solve, and we're going to get to those. But what we needed to recognize was that we couldn't do all of the things that were necessary to be done all of the time. And so when we created Housing Next, it was organized around a multi-sector leadership structure where we had the Chamber of Commerce and our Economic Development Alliance and a large family-owned corporation who came to the board. We also had our county government leaders, a couple of local municipal leaders, our public school superintendents were involved in the process, as well as our regional planning organization. And then we had our philanthropic partners. The Community Foundation was a primary leader. Along with that family-owned corporation, their family foundation was a big leader in figuring out how are we going to fund this thing going forward. And we've been talking to other corporate foundations as well about how do we invest in these kinds of things going forward. And then undergirding all of that, we really needed to understand who are the people that understand what's happening on the ground, right? So these high-level leadership folks knew things at the systems level, right? They understood how the thing worked all together as an ecosystem, but they weren't talking to families who were struggling to buy homes in the community, right? They weren't talking to single parents who could no longer afford to stay in the school district that their kids had been in and had to move to a different school district. They also didn't know the same things that our realtors and brokers knew, or that our builders and developers knew, our planners and architects, right? We have a multifaceted system that is perfectly designed to get the results we're getting. And the results we're getting aren't good, right? And so what we needed to do is understand what are all of the components in the system that aren't working well and how we can begin to modify those. And so also human resources and business owners, the folks who are trying to hire people, what were their experiences? So over the last 6 years of Housing Next, our key deliverables have been, we've been able to double the amount of affordable housing production, and that's affordable at 60% AMI and below. We've doubled that. We've gotten roughly 1.3 times as much market rate housing. So we've done better among affordable housing growth than we have among market rate housing growth. We've updated master plans and zoning ordinances. We created a revolving loan fund. And we have actionable data that we can share with our community around best practices. So I'm going to talk about some of those things briefly to give you a sense of how we did them and where we made mistakes. The big thing that I've found, I think, in all of this work is that most of it centers around communication and getting people on the same page about what's the problem we're trying to solve, what are the tools and resources that we have available to us today, and what are the things that we need? What are our barriers in order to actually make progress? And so if you can't see this, this is essentially a chart that illustrates all of the tools and programs that are available to reduce the cost of the building itself, to reduce the cost of the land or holding the land over time, and to reduce essentially barriers in the bureaucratic process of getting things done. And so there's a bunch of tools available. One of the big ones that we identified early in our process was that we didn't have gap financing, right? It costs a lot of money to build housing. Generally, it costs more to build than the average income earner can afford. And so if we're going to build a bunch of housing, we either need to accept that it's all going to be expensive, or we need to have less expensive capital available to invest in some of these deals that doesn't need a high rate of return. And so that revolving loan fund was a structure that we created early on in the process, and we're talking a lot with folks about. But it wasn't until 2021 that the American Rescue Plan Act started to dole out a lot of money to county and local units of government that we said there's a source of funds. And so we had laid the groundwork for the revolving loan fund for 2.5 years. And then when ARPA dollars finally became a reality, we said, we know how to plug those in. And so what we did is we created an $83 million fund using allocations from our local county governments, $10 million from Ottawa County, $17.5 million from Kent County. And then we used that to go leverage it for more money. So we got money from the MEDC, we got money from our community foundations, we got a regional CDFI, a community development finance institution, to match our local public contributions. So the county dollars went in at 0% interest. And then we're blending that with a low cost of capital with a community development finance institution. So the high level, right, the above the surface headline is we created an almost $85 million revolving loan fund that's attracting more capital all the time. Great, hooray for us. Below the surface is it took us 3 years to convince a bunch of people that this was a good idea. And in order to do that, we needed to talk to our local business owners to understand what was the need we were trying to solve for and what were they willing to invest, right? Time, talent, treasure, capital, land in some instances. In order to bring the CDFI in, it was a regional firm that covers a 10-state area. They said, we don't do local geographically focused funds. Like, this doesn't make any sense. We had to build a pipeline of projects to show them that we could move capital really quickly. And it wasn't until we showed them that we had local units of government who were on board to support really strategic kinds of projects, innovative projects, and that we had developers who were ready to build those, and that we understood what was the market, what was the gap, and how do we solve for that. And so this, and you don't need to be able to read this, but this is the list of projects that we have funded over the last 20 months since we launched that revolving loan fund. So we've got 18 projects in Kent County, 4 in Ottawa County. In the last 26 months, we have gotten more affordable housing units into the pipeline than we got in the last 26 years preceding that. Because we had these gap funding dollars available and because we laid the groundwork in a multi-sector approach. So we're gonna move, it's $45 million in Kent County and about $18 million in Ottawa County. We're in the process of raising additional dollars to do this all over again over the next 2.5 years. The second big one was community land trusts. Our initial focus at Housing Next was on rental product because we hadn't built nearly enough rental supply for our local workforce. We had been almost entirely focused on single family home ownership, but we had structured all of our regulatory code to make it really expensive to build single family homes. They had to be on big lots with a lot of infrastructure frontage, and that necessitated building big homes, which were expensive. And our local workforce couldn't afford big, expensive homes. And we had a bunch of corporations that were attracting young engineers who were like, I don't know about Holland, right? Do I really want to build a life in Holland? I got this engineering job and it's going to pay me $70,000 a year, which is great. But I don't know if I want to establish roots there. And so we heard over and over from our employers that we needed more rental product for people to come in and try the job for a couple of years and try on the community before they were willing to buy a home. So we built a lot of rental product early on in the process, but then we started to get pushback from communities saying, hey, you're not building enough for sale. We need affordable for sale product. And what we recognized early was our cost of land, because of the way we were zoning, was too expensive to justify affordable homeownership without $100,000 to $150,000 in subsidy per homeowner. So the community land trust was what we started with. We did this up in Grand Haven. Grand Haven contributed a piece of publicly owned land for roughly 10% of its market value. So they got essentially what they paid for it 20 years ago back out of it. They also waived their sewer and water connection fees, and they agreed to a brownfield tax increment finance agreement. And what we did was we brought capital to the table. So we brought impact capital from the community foundation, $1.5 million of low interest loan investment to fund the infrastructure and the construction. And all of that capital would get paid back as these homes were sold. But the underlying community land trust owns the land in perpetuity and ensures that half of the homes will remain affordable for the long term, and the other half are market rate. So the benefit of this is the market rate units generate a profit. That profit can then be used to provide a subsidy to our below market rate homes. 0 grant dollars awarded to this project, but we were able to achieve 5 homes sold at under $150,000. The average sale price at this time in Grand Haven was $484,000. So roughly a quarter of the price. We got 7 homes at $170,000, 4 homes at below $190,000, and the remainder were market rate. And so what we needed there was a strategy that was scalable, right? We knew that we couldn't raise grant dollars at a tune of $100,000 to $150,000 per home across thousands of homeowners. And so we used the community land trust to create a scalable approach where every time we're able to secure land, we can enter into the agreement and say, we're going to reduce the cost of land. We're going to use a brownfield TIF. It's easier to leverage the TIF when the community is on board and they know that it's going to be long-term affordable. We can do that project over and over and over again. Those costs, though, were pre-COVID, right? So those were 2019 construction numbers. Our costs would probably go up about 30% over that time period. So I'm not guaranteeing we can build homes for 150,000 again, but we can definitely do it for under 200. So this is the last one I'm going to talk about, and this is the one I'm the most excited about. We just launched it for Housing Next in late spring, early summer. Essentially what we did is we recognized that across Kent County, our status quo pattern of planning and zoning was going to produce this kind of development pattern. If you can see the green areas on that map, all that green represents vacant land in Kent County. We've got more than 118,000 acres of vacant land in Kent County, but it's almost entirely zoned for single family homes. So on our vacant residentially zoned land, 97.8% is zoned exclusively for single family homes with an average lot frontage of 78 feet, an average lot size requirement of 1.5 acres, which means the typical home that we build in Kent County is going to be $426,000 based on our current land use practices. In order to create all these homes, we could create 73,000 new homes, which is roughly our growth trajectory through 2050. So we can accommodate all the people who are likely to move into Kent County up to 2050 if we consume all of the land that's available under current planning and zoning. But we're going to have to build $8.2 billion worth of infrastructure to extend sewer and water and road into all of those places that are green on the map. And we said, we think there's probably a better way to do this. We're not entirely sure, but we're guessing. And so we looked at 32 corridors in Kent County that already had sewer and water, already had paved roads with lots of traffic capacity, and had a bunch of underutilized or vacant land along those corridors. Think about every corridor that you can imagine that has a Taco Bell or an Arby's or a Jiffy Lube. Most of those corridors are heavily underutilized, and they all look the same across North America, right? You could land in one of those suburban strip mall corridors almost anywhere in North America, as long as there aren't mountains behind you and you won't know, are you in Michigan or Mississippi? So as we looked at those, we said, all right, we've got our strategic corridors. We know there's high potential for increased development and tax revenue. And we think we can build safe, vibrant, complete neighborhoods where we're not going to run into a bunch of neighborhoods who say, I'm all for affordable housing, but don't build it anywhere near me. That's the big issue that we kept running into. And so not only did we say, hey, we can build all of the housing that we need on those established corridors that already have infrastructure, but we can show you what the taxable value is going to be. We can increase taxable value on this 40-acre site from $5.5 million to $130 million if you allow us to build. We can increase the county operations tax from $23,000 to $536,000 a year, right? And so our revenue to infrastructure ratio goes from 31% to 715% based on this kind of a development pattern. And we can do it all over Kent County, right? We can create the new revenue that's necessary to subsidize affordability. We can ensure that 20 to 30% of all of the new housing that gets built is affordable. And frankly, affordable housing is generally going to be the anchor project because market rate developers look at these corridors today and say, nobody wants to live there. I'm not going to take the risk of building something there. But if you anchor it with affordability and start to build a sense of place, Suddenly the market rate developers go, oh, I see what you're doing there. People do like this location. I can build a few things there as well. And so the last thing that we're doing in alignment with this is creating an equitable development initiative where we want to invest in small emerging developers, and particularly developers of color from Kent County who want to be a part of this wealth generation and growth potential, and setting aside land opportunities for them to become developers and investors in these neighborhoods, grow their wealth, grow their capacity, and become partners for us in the communities. So the next steps for this particular project are, we created a vision. We said, we think on 32 corridors across Kent County, we can build more than 70,000 units over the next 25 years. We're kind of showing you what this could look like, but local communities, we need you to prioritize. So step one is going to each of our 27 municipalities and saying, here's what we think, but we don't get to decide for you. You need to tell us what's the right thing in your community. Where does it belong? How do we structure it? What tools do you have available and are you willing to use? The next step is, once they've done that prioritization process, is we need to fix their regulatory framework. Almost none of our communities have a regulatory framework that supports real growth in their communities. And then we'll come alongside that with the financing. So we created our revolving loan fund. The amount of growth that we're anticipating is going to need a lot more creative gap financing. And so we're in the process of raising that. And then the last thing is we need our county entities, our local entities, and MDOT, and we've gotten the governor's office and MDOT to agree to this. Our streets need to be fixed and not fill potholes. Our streets need to become places, right? The kinds of corridors that I'm talking about are places that nobody wants to be caught on foot, right? And that's detrimental to the opportunity of building real places in neighborhoods. We've got to build neighborhoods that people are excited to call their address, where they want to walk their dog and they want their kids to be able to walk to school and they want to hop on their bike and take a bike ride. Those things need to be safe on those corridors, and we need to redesign our streets to support neighborhood development. And the good news is most of these corridors are going to require a lot of MDOT investment over the next 10 or 15 years. And so as those investments occur, we want to have a plan for placemaking that comes right alongside of them. So then the last element of this is we've created a pattern book. It's a regulatory guide for our local units of government to teach them how to zone for the kinds of products that we really haven't allowed for over the last 50 years. So small scale homes on small lots, backyard cottages, allowing for townhomes and row homes, and making it really easy to build those products by right, as well as fourplexes and small scale apartment buildings. And how do we do that so that we can support both homeowners and renters simultaneously? So I think that's my time. I'll hand it back to you, John, or Arthur. Yeah, happy to take questions. Yes.
I love this so much. Thank you. I wanted to ask two questions. First, on zoning, did you work with the local municipalities on zoning improvements, or did you let the pattern book sort of guide them? And second, you talked about affordable housing. Do you mean like officially affordable, or do you mean like market rate affordable?
Yes. So on zoning, what we did is we said, what is the minimum amount of land, setbacks, frontage required to build this product type? So we first went to architects and said, how do we build a townhouse? How wide does it need to be? And most architects said, it should probably be about 16 feet wide at minimum, right? Some people want a 24-foot wide townhouse, but 16 is kind of your minimum. And so then we said, all right, how much land do we need in order to build a 16-foot wide townhouse? And we structured our regulatory code around what is a livable unit of that type. Then we went to the local unit of government and we showed them 100 examples of that livable unit type in other contexts. And we said, which ones do you hate? And so they crossed off, 66 of the 100. We said, okay, so that means there's at least 34 that you do like. Let's code for those. And we did that from municipality to municipality. So our townships aren't accepting of the same kind of growth and density as our cities. And so we have different patterns for different locations. But some townships are like, actually, we want to build a village center right here. And we're super into those townhomes and we want the higher density, but only in this location. In terms of affordability, when I say affordable, I mean income restricted at or below 60% AMI. Anything above that, I typically refer to as attainable or missing middle, right? We talk about those things interchangeably. Affordable to me is it's income restricted, it's got some kind of a subsidy baked in, and it's usually financed using the low income housing tax credit program. MISHDA is getting much more flexible with how that program works. The 9% program used to be really competitive, and you're super lucky if you got an award once every 10 years. The 9% program will continue to be that way, but the 4% program is really opening up new opportunities. Yes.
Christine Van Manningham from the Area Agency on Aging. There's so much I like about what you're doing, and that's fabulous. I'm interested as you think about that dense housing development, about townhouses. I'm thinking about accessibility, and not just for older adults as our population ages, but younger individuals with disabilities and families. So as you're thinking about that, where does that fit? Where's the universal design and that livability in that context?
Yeah, great question. So when we think about these different housing types that frankly were super common prior to World War II, and we just stopped building them. One of my favorite options is the triplex, which is 3 units stacked on top of each other. And it's really easy to build a ground floor 900 to 1400 square foot unit that is 0-step universal design. The 2 above that tend to be accessed by stairs. There was a great article, I don't know if anybody reads the New York Times, there was a great article about elevator design just a couple of months ago. The US has super funky standards when it comes to how do you design an elevator. In a lot of European countries, it's easy to build a small compact elevator, basically designed for 1 or 2 people. And so we're working right now with Representative Grant on some code amendments to the Michigan Building Code that would allow for single stair access for buildings up to 6 floors, as long as no more than 4 units are accessing that stair, as well as smaller, more compact lifts or elevators to allow those kinds of things to occur. Because what we're finding is the standard product is one of 2 things, right? It's either a big building with one long central corridor where it feels like you're in The Shining, walking down that long hallway to your apartment. And you only have light on one side of your unit, right? You don't get light on 2 or 3 sides or airflow. Or it's a single family house, right? And so what we want is for our building code to be amended to make it much easier to build small scale multifamily units that are oriented around families, right? So that you can have a 3-bedroom unit with light on 2 or 3 sides and lots of airflow. But you don't have to spend $1 million on an elevator and building this long corridor or multiple staircases. So that's one. The other really important one for our rural environments is pocket neighborhoods and cottage courtyards. Building small accessible cottages that are anywhere from 500 to 900 square feet. Often those are single level. So you've got your master bedroom on the main floor. You might have a loft, but you might have just 2 bedrooms that are all 0-step universal design. Those are really attractive. Almost everybody loves them. And once they see a good design, most people don't resist them in their neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. As you can see, there is a lot of aspiration from examples of others that have already kind of put the Rubik's Cube together. You remember your days in the Rubik's Cube, right? Or am I dating myself too badly, guy? Is that going to be awful? Yeah, you get it. All right, good. Thank you very much. One of the very actionable components of this idea around housing, though, is the work that the Southwest Michigan Chamber is up to right now in helping to host the livable communities kind of conversation. And I know that Arthur has not only a request for your participation, but some update on how we can begin to engage this conversation and begin to put the pieces together of what Ryan just showed as to what can be here in Southwest Michigan, and in particular in Berrien County. So please help me welcome the President and CEO of the Southwest Michigan Chamber, Arthur Havlicek.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. What I'm about to share with you all, actually, Rubik's Cube is the perfect analogy, or maybe a puzzle piece, because the event that we plan to host in December is a perfect continuation from what Ryan and many of the principals Ryan was just talking about to some of the work that we're going to be doing later in this agenda here at the SLC Summit. We are pleased to share that we will be bringing the acclaimed nonprofit Strong Towns to Southwest Michigan. Strong Towns is a 501c3 organization that specializes in things like urban planning, housing, and development. They emphasize principles like walkable communities, density, zoning, ending parking mandates. And we're going to have Chuck Marone himself, who founded Strong Towns, actually come. He just finished writing Escaping the Housing Trap, a Wall Street Journal best-selling book. And he is going to be presenting on this. It's a 2-day summit. So December 12th in the evening, Chuck is going to be doing a book presentation and a book signing on Escaping the Housing Trap, which is a unique book. Has anybody read this book? A couple people have already. So it's a unique book because it talks about how housing is shelter and how housing is also a financial product and the tension between those two things. And that's a conversation that we don't often have enough. So he does a really good job walking through that in the book. I'm excited for his presentation, but then the next day is even more exciting because that next morning, we're going to have a series of workshops on the Strong Towns approach. Again, many of the principles you just heard Ryan talk about, led by Chuck Marone himself. So starting with the 4-step public investment process, tactical urbanism, and then some meaty items on housing itself. Incremental housing, pre-approved building plans, like that what was it called? Zoning guide. Zoning and ordinances reform, and then a fun one for some topical conversations, ending parking mandates and minimums. So we hope you'll join us. It's a very brief update. Please scan the code. I hope it works. The cost to register is $20. It gets you into both days, gets you a signed copy of that book, access to Chuck and the Strong Towns principles, and lunch on the second day. And the real purpose behind this, is that at the chamber, one of the things we hear employers talk a lot about is that talent aspect, the need to find talent, but then the talent talks about the need to find somewhere to live. So it's really hard to separate some of the concepts we've talked about here this morning, and they're just so interconnected. The only way we're going to make progress on this is if we collectively create alignment and a common lexicon around some of these principles in development, urban design, and that's really what this event is looking to do. So please join us.
All right, I'm going to leave that QR code up there. You all can flash the QR code right now to make sure that you sign up and participate. As Arthur said, this builds upon what you just heard from Ryan and the work that he's done, where he's proven the model, where he's proven the Rubik's Cube can be solved in a unique and collaborative way across all kinds of different sectors. The CDFI question is one that I think is going to be really unique because it doesn't exist right now, the Community Development Finance Organization, right? There are several institutions who could fit that right now. It's a question of whether or not we want that in Berrien County, and I think that's just one of several components that can help to really build this conversation. So that leads us to a unique opportunity right now, which, as we think about local housing initiatives and where we're going, what are some things that are already happening? Where do we have some engagement already occurring? Where do we already have some shovels that are about ready to be put into the ground? Let's think about where we're seeing that development begin to happen. We're going to do it first right now with some updates from Andrew Hahn and Chris Cook on things that are already happening in some housing initiatives. We'll also hear later then on the riverfront, right? We'll talk riverfront secondarily to it. After this, we're going to break into some small groups. You can see each of the boards around you. We're going to break into small groups, which are essentially, we'll figure it out in a moment. But the idea behind it is let's look at what's already happening and be thinking about either aspirationally from, let's say, your community master plan, what might be attainable in your community. What are some of those barriers, et cetera? And you'll see that on the grid in a minute. But let's talk about what's already happening and where we're going to see change coming very shortly. So please welcome Andrew Hahn and Chris Cook.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Andrew Hahn, the Vice President of Business Development at Cornerstone Alliance. And
Chris Cook, I'm the Managing Director of Harbor Shores Community Redevelopment.
so I want to offer some really quick commentary on those last two presentations. So one, kudos, incredible work you guys are doing, Ryan. It's amazing. I'm a big proponent of R&D, and that is not in the sense that we think of with Whirlpool, with research and development. It is rip off and duplicate. You are doing great work, and there's a lot we can learn and apply that directly in our community. So, and furthering on that, Arthur, big kudos on bringing Chuck Marone and his team in. The Strong Towns folks are incredible. I'm absolutely always sharing their gospel, and I've had a chance to cross paths with them before. So exciting stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the pipeline and the demand specifically in the Twin Cities right now and the two neighboring townships. So excited. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of demand and a lot that's coming into the pipeline, but it's not enough. All right. So you probably can't read this, and that's okay, but that shows demand that is projected in Benton Harbor and St. Joe over the next 4 years, 2024 to 2028. That is across both rental units and for owner occupied. That bottom line number is 1,475 units that could be supported. And that's, again, that's split across owner and rentals. And we've got some great production going, but it's not enough. You're also not going to be able to read this. And when we get through the rest of the slides, we'll talk about what that number is that's in production. It's a great number. It's robust. Production might be a little overstatement. That implies it's building, but are under consideration. Some are already through site plan review, but these are all real projects that we've had a hand in or have been engaged on. So I'm excited to talk about that. Chris is going to talk a little bit about Harbor Shores and some of the work that they're doing and how this is going to help meet some of those needs.
Thank you, Andrew. Harbor Shores has been quite busy over the last 10 or 15 years, and we are ready to take that to the next level now. It's now a self-sustaining entity, not supported by Whirlpool financially anymore. We have a top 100 golf course that has again hosted the senior PGA 6 times. Whirlpool has served as a tremendous catalyst for all of the work at Harbor Shores, but now it's our turn collectively to continue that good work. And just to point out that, of course, new housing supports the tax base and increases spending within our community. So what has been completed? In Benton Harbor, we have a few neighborhoods that have been completed. Champions Village, which is on the golf course complex. The Enclave, which is right by the 6th tee. We have 3 complete there and 1 ready to break ground shortly. And then Trailside, which is across the street from there at the corner of Clock Road and M63, has 19 units. And then the very successful Emma Jean Hall Apartments. Thank you to Whirlpool for building those, and we've seen the success of those apartments and want to continue to duplicate and rip off that idea going forward. In St. Joe, we have the Fairways development, which is along the 5th hole, and then Harbor Village, which is where the inn is located. We have actually 8 units underway there. We are also taking reservations on units that have not been constructed yet, and those are filling up quickly. So the demand is there. We also have 12 residential units at the inn as well as the rental units there. And then in Benton Township, we have the Hideaway development along Hickman Park Road, and that is fully sold out at 53 units. So almost 260 units with 9 more underway and a bunch following behind them, which I'll get to in a minute. Just to give some context and location as to some of the things that I just talked about and what I will is parcels 1 and 2, which are in St. Joe, and talk a little bit about those in a minute. The Harbor Village and the inn is located right here. So just across M63 along the river are parcels 1 and 2. Parcel 5 is at the corner of Upton Drive and M63. And then we have our parcel 6, which is just at the top of the map in Benton Township, right by the 11th green and 12th tee on the golf course. And then our parcel 20, which is just above the Hill District, as it's now called. And then also just recently purchased the Modern Plastics property, which encompasses what our lot 16 was and down into here. Interestingly, I get more questions about modern plastics than anything these days.
I feel like we just need a round of applause.
So happy to get that acquired as part of the county tax sale. Now we have demolition, environmentals, planning, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't necessarily have a plan ready to go for that, but the opportunity was there. We were glad to be able to get it, clean it up for the community. I think that's you now.
Back.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to be clear. These are projects that are in various states of consideration. These are both properties that Cornerstone owns and has invested in. And, you know, I think we've shown some really incredible transformation in downtown Benton Harbor. We're not moving forward on projects yet in either of these buildings, but we have designs, we have interest from developers, and every single one of these things matters. Every 4 units you put above a storefront in a downtown is more people living there. It's more activity at night and increased safety and more consumer spending. So just with those two, you're looking at potentially another 13 units. I'm going to talk about some projects that you are all probably familiar with, some that have been a long time coming, and a few that I'm pretty excited about that most of you probably haven't heard about. This is actually, these three properties have been purchased by an Oakland County-based developer and construction company called Clement Construction. They first came to Benton Harbor as part of the lead line replacement project as a contractor and have really fallen in love with the community and have seen the potential. They've recently purchased all 3 of those buildings and have done some really great work cleaning them up. They're already moving forward on that one in the middle with doing all the abatement work that needed to be done. We've now got them connected with people that are helping them model what can go in there, how many units could be supported, the sizes, and who they should be targeting. So those are super exciting. You're looking at, what do we got there? Almost 30 plus units right in the middle of the arts district. So I would anticipate seeing more from them. I know they actually spoke to the media recently. So they've had a chance to connect with the city and start sharing their vision for how this area can be reactivated. So those things go a long way in a small geography. A couple more that you're probably familiar with. So the former Chase building on Riverview, directly adjacent to the Whirlpool campus there, those developers are moving on 16 units in that building, and they have some ideas for what second phases could be. So if any of you are familiar with that site, it's dramatically overparked. I mean, it is surrounded by a sea of parking that is not needed for that site and probably even exceeds the code. So we're talking with them. We're excited about that. We're going to talk a little bit more later about how we take that parcel, some of the property that Whirlpool has, and some other opportunities in that adjacent area to really kickstart the next phase of riverfront development in Benton Harbor. The middle one is Project T. That is a project that I know Whirlpool has been engaged in, and a lot of partners in this room. The city's been very supportive of that. That's at the former hospital site on Pipestone and is moving forward. That's 77 units. And then Chris, I'm stealing your thunder here a little bit, but the modern plastic site, which Chris just talked about, and I went down and took a picture of after it had been revealed from all the overgrowth. So maybe 60 units on that side. I think there's more to learn as far as what's underneath the ground, where stuff can be built, where it can't. But it's such an incredible site. It aligns with the city's vision around, why am I forgetting the name of the creek? Ox Creek is right directly on Ox Creek. I'm going to pass it back to you to talk about some more of the Harbor Shores projects.
Sure. So here's our parcel 20, which again was located just above the Hill District. We have 7 units on one side of the road here along the golf course, along the 13th hole. Those will be golf course villas. They're going to be about 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. On the other side of the road was a house that I think this is my volunteer uniform from the PGA. While I was walking score, I'm walking down the hole and I see this big sign on the house that says for sale. So we acquired that home. That will be demolished and we'll have room for 2 more housing units there. That plan is into the Benton Township Planning Commission. It received a conditional approval. There's some sewer issues to be worked out downstream. But as soon as those are tackled, we're ready to go with 9 more units in Benton Township. And then parcel 6, which is the one up to the far north on that prior master plan. Here, we have room for about 24 units, some attached, some detached. I'm trying to look for a lot of what was just mentioned in the prior presentations for opportunities for seniors, single-story living, but yet with a golf course experience right nearby. That one's a little further out, similar infrastructure issues, but that is definitely on our playlist. And then our parcels 1 and 2, we have a meeting with the city of St. Joe in a couple weeks. We've been working real hard to get one scheduled. And so this gives you some sense of what we're talking about there, which is about 200 units, mix of all different varieties, townhomes, single family, single story, condo, potentially hotel, potentially apartment. We'll work through all those zoning type issues with the city, and we're going to kick that off again in 2 weeks. And then our parcel 5 again, which is at the corner of Upton and M63. This one's a challenge from a permitting perspective, lots of wetlands left in that old interchange. We're working with various builders and developers to see what we can do there. We just finished a wetlands investigation. We think that we're going to have a meeting with Eagle pretty soon to see which of those wetlands are regulated, what can we do to try to help get about 50 to 100 units in there as well. And then back over to St. Joe and Andrew.
All right. Musical mics here. So this stuff is something that I'm so excited about and so proud of the progress that we've made working hand in hand with the city of St. Joe. So we just helped them develop and approve an economic development strategy that came as part of the MEDC's Redevelopment Ready Communities program. So John talked about that and Ryan talked about it. I can't speak highly enough of it. It is a lot of work to get your community through it, but it is absolutely worth it when you get to that pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. So these sites that you see on the right, they're kind of tough to see. That is, the orientation is north, Lake Boulevard's on the left, Lake Michigan's on the left. I'm sure you're all familiar with the surface parking lots that happen to occupy the best real estate, potentially in the county, certainly in the city. Those have sat not producing revenue, not bringing people and their spending into downtown. We had a chance to talk through with commission last fall, the plan that when we helped get the city certified, that we would engage with the MEDC's redevelopment services team. So there's been I think it can be a challenge sometimes in helping elected officials understand that there's not just put a for sale sign in the ground and let the zoning do the work. There's other ways to do it. So we're going to engage in a community-led process around visioning for that site, looking at all the attributes, the market, everything else, and then have a project that can go out and the community can say, this is what we want, come build it for us. So it's almost a pre-approval. So you're kind of over all the grumbling right out of the gate. So we're super excited about that. Who knows what it could look like? There isn't a project yet, but we think easily those sites 4 and 5 could accommodate 100 units. Sites 6, which is a little bit north on the other side of Shoes, could also accommodate 50 easy. So those are big. Those are going to have a big impact. Another one I'm going to talk about real briefly, which was in the news recently, is the former Berrien Hills site. So I had a chance to talk with the developer yesterday. They have a great team. These are serious folks. They have recently closed on the property. It's investors that are local and also the developers out of Indianapolis, and they have a big portfolio. So this is the plan that was approved previously by the township. They are looking at what to do and if this is still the exact same thing. As far as I know, the fundamentals of what they want to do are pretty darn consistent with this. Potentially some tweaks. It's not real easy to build a lake. So, they're going to have to work through that process and make sure that they can keep that really iconic feature. But the first phase would be 120 units. That would be online in the next 12 to 24 months. So that's going to have an impact. And then potentially another 300 plus on that site over the next kind of 10-year window. So what's the process? And there's no way anyone's going to be able to read these steps, but it is not simple. It takes a really committed and coordinated effort to do this. So we've had the chance to engage with some consultants and help lift up some of our municipal partners and help them understand what this process is and how you do it from start to finish. So that's something I'm excited about. It's really consistent with what we've been talking about, getting that housing production going, getting the zoning dialed, getting your permitting and approving consistent and clean and easy and transparent. We will share this so everyone has this. And I've got some great slide decks from the work that we've done over the last year. I already talked about the Redevelopment Ready Communities program. That's over on the right. And the document on the left is just a good example of having everything transparent and laid out. So somebody can walk in, they can understand exactly what the steps are, what the timeline is, and what the expectations are from them. That can be a little bit of a mystery sometimes where places haven't had the capacity or the processes mapped out as well as they could. And then just two last things that I'm really excited about that we're doing to try and help move the needle on this throughout the county. So we received a grant from the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development for their Rural Readiness Program. And with that, deployed a four-session training session. It started from kind of the overview of the development process, and it's going to end. We'll make sure you all get the invite in early December with our last session, which is literally digging through project pro formas, the financials of a project. So if you're a municipal official, you're looking at approving incentives, you understand what the project is, what it needs, and how you can help make it go without, giving away too much necessarily. And as the other part of that, we've had the chance to do real estate redevelopment strategies in 4 communities. So we've completed them in Watervliet, in Buchanan, and in St. Joe Charter Township, and have to go present those and share those over the next month or so. And we're just about to dive in with the team at Niles next week. So super excited about that. It's a little bit of a snapshot of what we're working on, but that number that I promised for the analysis, 1475 is what's in demand over the next 4 years. 880 is what happens if everything the two of us talked about gets built. So I think there's a good chance a lot of it's going to get built, but it's not enough, and that is going to continue to drive prices up. Demand is going to keep going up. So I'm so excited and heartened by this discussion of really taking a coordinated approach to this and digging in, rolling up our sleeves, and getting more housing built. So I talked a whole bunch, and I feel like I should give you another chance, Chris. We're good. Okay. Well, how about questions? Is there anything, Lisa?
Yeah. Chris, when you look at the single family homes, what's average cost?
Average cost is probably going to be in the $500,000 range. So there was talk earlier in Ryan's presentation about TIF, and TIF is the way that we have been able to build what we've built so far, the 200 and some units. Thanks to the communities in the county for agreeing to do that. So we're able to take that increment that occurs with the taxation and pay for all the infrastructure that helped build Harbor Shores. I am intrigued by some of the things that Ryan talked about to try to help us bring that price point down to a more affordable level. But that remains to be seen. We know what the cost to construct is, and that's the number I gave you.
Back there.
What percentage of your units are going to be owner occupied as opposed to rental?
We can't control who buys the home, but we develop a product that is suitable for both uses. In St. Joe, our properties are in the waterfront recreational district, which allows rentals. Right now in Harbor Village, that ratio is about 50-50. I would expect, but I can't guarantee, nor do I know what it would be at parcel 1 and 2, but would expect something similar. Our other properties, I think we expect to be more full-time homeowners. And that is certainly what our desire is. Again, it's just a little bit beyond our control. Thank you. John.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Andrew. So now comes the fun part. We've obviously built the aspirational, the what can we do if we get it really right, like some others have already done, right? We can think of it that way. We then talked about how can we all get in a room together with the Southwest Michigan Chamber and envision that new future. And then we talked about things that are already happening, because progress doesn't start when we finally get our act together. It starts now as we begin to make progress. And we know all throughout Southwest Michigan, and in particular in our local municipalities, we already have good things happening. We already have good projects underway. I think of the mayor of the city of New Buffalo and the challenges that he's had in housing. We think about Chickiming Township and Dave Bunty. We think about, now mind you, we looked at specific areas in the North County, but we've got so many places all throughout the county where good projects are underway, where things are happening, where there's impediments to change and opportunities to growth. All these things happen. Let's do this now. Break up into essentially 5 or 6 groups. You can see that you've got a panel, a board. It's a hard board. I would ask that you take that board down, put it on your tables, and actually begin to fill in that framework. The framework itself is just to begin thinking of this in a very structured manner, right? In a very direct and structured manner. The framework itself is clearly defined. What's the project name? Who's the municipality that it's in? Who is the lead organization for it? Who is the secondary organization or support organizations for that? What does the end state look like? How many units, et cetera? Essentially, that's what you just heard from Chris and Andrew. Here's the lead organization. Here's the municipality, the lead organization, the support organization, the number of units, et cetera. Let's chronicle all of this and begin to think about how the learning we do in one municipality or one particular project helps to build learning and capacity across multiple other organizational structures, right? You follow where we're going with this. Please break up. We don't have to have 6 groups. There are 6 boards. We can have 5 groups. That's fine. But let's get together, grab a board, bring chairs together, spend 15 minutes if you would, and then each of the groups will be reporting out. Susan is handing out right now a couple of thought starters and questions. She's also handing out what each group needs to do, which is what? 1, assign somebody to take notes. 2, assign somebody to speak to it. 15 minutes and go.
All righty.
One of us scared him away. I'd rather stand in the back. Right.
Right. There's a lot of that, right? We look at so 38 district runs 12 months.
Hey, you're everywhere.
6 months. I want to talk. So what else? I mean, we were ready. It's bad. It's sick, right? So doesn't span into the.
How you doing?
Right. So.
You did. Oh, that makes me feel so much better. But this is fun. All letters.
Yeah, we had Chuck 2 weeks ago. We brought him around this great. Everybody's been like, this is so great.
Yeah, it is not. Yeah. So. Especially in our area. 95%. I saw very impressive. I thought you were out a while back. Try to find out. So, did you put a capture?
Stop it. I do.
So anyway, I appreciate it. But hey, question, talk to you.
So, like, it's great.
I voted no. 12 months.
Yeah.
You want to do project T1? Sorry, project Well, let's talk about what made the aspiration is having an aspiration is in your master plan.
Okay.
I can get another short too. Let's do
Let's just pretend you're not there. Because they'll have a
Leor. Did you donate?
And there's
It stays.
yeah, well. Is there any?
I think that's the reason.
I like that. No, that makes sense. Whoever's going to say this, can you read my handwriting?
Without getting caught.
All right, good. We can have one more, even though it's Jim, you guys, we can get my side count. Oh, you'll give a side count. You just don't do my clock. I can pull it. Jim, you make it to a special.
Okay.
Well, the original plan actually, they probably. So the township is. Oh, yeah, yeah. So they've already. Really trans. So there's some cool elements. So that's the good stuff. Zoning board of appeals. All right, we want to do something else. Is there more to add? Try where everything Once I get another board, we write that down. So the last one. Oh, no. We're overachieving. We're overachieving. Don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Yep. That's a different level. Says our manager. No. Well, and I know that that's what we're no, it's not being so it's part of it. It's not. I mean, as we move from the housing study,
diagnostic tool. We need it at every level. It's clear that we also need it at the we got this. 40 minutes isn't that still 15. All right, folks, 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. Please assign somebody to report to the group, please. Please be sure to assign somebody to report. All right, folks, if you want to assign your individual, and what we're going to do is have the report outs with the board coming forward, if you would please. Report outs with the board coming forward. And then if you wouldn't mind coming up and identifying what's happening on your board. Thank you all very much. All right, why don't we come back together if we could, please. Now is a good moment to remind all of you, the sharing that we're doing right now helps to build some understanding of what great things are happening, challenging though they may be, but great things that are happening. We're going to do this with Riverfront in a while, but let's keep the focus right now on housing. What we'll do is then chronicle all of this, ensure that it's widely distributed for everybody to participate and understand. And then the idea behind it is that the learning that is done in one municipality or one location or within one developer might be able to influence the other, might be able to increase the capacity of each other, might be able to see actual improvement in the housing question in Berrien County. I presume, and I'm not familiar with how this is all going to go with strong towns, but Arthur, I presume this is the kind of thing we're going to talk about also, right? Zoning, implementation, how it works from a local municipality, and how we build that kind of capacity in Berrien County. We know that it is critical. And let's go back to what we first talked about from Upjohn Institute, right? Losing population, not keeping population, and shortly we will not have enough population to even do what we're doing today. So what is it that we're doing to ensure that we have housing available to attract, keep, retain, and grow? That's all part of this conversation. In the meantime, too, we know that there's an awful lot of need for affordability. We learned in our work with the housing diagnostic tool that we have needs at every level of housing, which is, to Ryan Kilpatrick's point, right? Let's be honest about the fact that we're not going to be able to solve everybody's need in every single project, but what we can do is be able to build towards a better system, a better understanding, and a better capacity. That's the goal and objective. So let's hear what's happening very briefly. We'll chronicle all this out. The framework that you see is just to help to think about things in a process orientation, in a project orientation. So since I was the note taker, I'm probably going to have to offer some help on my scribble. With that in mind, the mayor of the city of New Buffalo said that he would be happy to do the first effort to try to understand my scribble and indicate the things that we had done in our table here. If you could put it here, John, please welcome John Humphrey, mayor of the city of New Buffalo.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot. So we're talking about South County here, and South County is what we kindly refer to as the black hole of housing. So what we do have going on here, and I want to give props to Rick, because the city of Niles seems to have the most potential for housing in the space we're looking for here. And Rick's got, how many projects? With two going on right now. And I don't know a lot about those, so I would defer to Rick to talk about it. But we'll move to some of the other ones I do know quite a bit about. This next one here in Bridgman Trails in Bridgman City. City Manager Wanganoom and I have been involved in various issues where we discuss what's going on with this. This is a great project, but it is underway and has some problems with some of the biggest problems that we have in South County, which we call for housing death by water and sewer. This project here itself has some issues with the Drain Commission and some stormwater issues that we're working on. Hopefully this is successful. This one here down in my neck of the woods, New Buffalo Township. This was a great idea that started through the school to build additional units on a property directly across from the New Buffalo Elementary School. And it went out at the gate as a deed restrictions to make it permanent housing and to make sure it was something that was available for teachers, firemen, local people. It's expanded to 99 units or 80 to 99. They had to bring Michigan in to see if they could make it work. There's some conflicts there. And again, this is currently suffering by the death by water and sewer problem, but there may be a remedy. It remains to be seen. Juan, I don't know much about the Habitat. That's a small unit that you have going on in Bridgman.
Yeah, it's a small housing project, but Habitat is broke ground after 4 years of plan.
Cool. Chickamee Elementary is another repurposing of an old, the old Chickamee Elementary School for workforce housing. And that's another great project, but that's been mired down in some zoning issues that I hope are getting corrected. It's a 10-acre property, and there's a great opportunity to build some affordable workforce housing here that is on a rental basis. And then last, we have the other ones over there is Lake Township, and this is a manufactured single-family home project that's been in development for some time. This one actually passed the death by water and sewer test and is going into development. So this is probably becoming a reality quicker than everything else here, other than what I don't know about from the city of Niles. So that would be it for South County.
Thank you, John. All right, who's up? Who's reporting for the next group? Excellent. Thank you very much. Since we repeat the question, if the question does come up, I think that might be helpful because we are making sure we keep this for posterity's sake on our YouTube channel. And that's the reason we're coming up here, so that it can be in the camera shot too. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm not sure we understood the assignment, or we understood it and we took it another direction. We were a group of incredible thinkers over there, and I was along for the ride. And we didn't have housing projects to chronicle, so we took another approach. We talked about what were the key principles and things that we wanted to make sure that as we think about all these projects, way to go first and set the bar high. Thank you very much. What are the things that we need to keep in mind? And we talked about all the different cohorts and the different demographics. We really dove into what are some of the attributes of demographics that we need to make sure. And John was an incredible scribe here. So he captured, accommodate all cohorts, demographics, earnings, and there's cohorts in that box 3 times. So pay attention to the different cohorts across age, demographics, et cetera. And making sure that we have a wide variety of housing to meet those needs, that it's not a one-fits-all approach. And John, where I'm going off the rails, you have to rein me in. Placemaking, as we really got into the dialogue, we realized that we were talking about box checking. We're talking about numbers, both in terms of demographics and housing units, but we really weren't talking about creating a sense of place. And we spent a lot of time talking about really not just livable communities, but inclusive communities where people can live across and live together, that we're not creating segmented communities, whether it's $3 million homes, $500,000 homes, and under $150,000 homes, and people aren't able to live in community together. Not just supply and demand, but really making community, and build a method to support construction of housing below market. We loved hearing what was happening in Kent County, where some of the land bank was able to half the houses were at market rate or about, and so by demand, and then they are able to hold those costs down for below market. And then planning and zoning that supports a range of construction types, not just stick-built homes, but really construct a range of. Dr. Hempel there talked about, I think, a project out in California where factory-built homes and really making communities there and driving down the cost of that. We also talked about building communities, building housing strategies around bringing cohorts together, such as a project in South Bend where older adults there's housing for older adults and youth aging out of foster care, bringing the attributes of those together to build the supportive community in that regard. Supporting organizations, we talked about Corewell in terms of both, as an employer needing housing for potential employees, but also the health of our community, how housing was important, universal design, age-friendly communities, AAA certainly a part of that, and we talked about Habitat for Humanity. We hadn't heard about that in this conversation as well, that they're an important component. So we didn't do your assignment, but we did something else.
All right, who's next? Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Come on up. Did you do the assignment? Yeah.
So what I learned was if you don't walk away, you are presenting. We sort of did the assignment. So we started talking about some of the projects that we do have going on, and make sure you correct me here. I am now and forever going to have death by water and sewer in my mind, because that's what one of the big takeaways we had when we were talking about this. Real estate development strategy in the city of Niles, Cornerstone leading that. They're working at place in Maine in Niles and are about to do a walking tour to see what is available, talking about the development in that area. So it's really in kind of just that preliminary stage there. We talked a little bit about what does affordability look like and what does it mean to who. So one of the projects that it's Barron Community Foundation, we are taking the lead on working with the Chamber and with the Southwest Michigan Realtor Association and Benton Township, identifying some lots that the township has where we could bring in, Christine, those modular homes so that we can do site prep, we can put the home on there, and also working with the banks, because some of the banks are working with people who are looking more in what's affordable to them is $150,000 home. We've set aside, the Community Foundation has set aside $500,000 already, starting that that fund, so that we can build that home, work with the bank, sell that home, and build another one. The stopping point is the water and sewer. Because am I building a well? Am I connecting? What are the connecting fees? But some of those things. So then, we talked about where do we have other opportunities? Because is it Benton Township? We need housing everywhere. So what municipalities have maybe some of those corridors that we can go into and start building some of those homes in those neighborhoods? And when we look at modular homes, they're very nice homes. So that's a project that we started talking, and then everybody started exchanging business cards. Alex, where'd you go? Okay. Step in if I'm doing this one wrong. Benton Harbor is working on some infill housing, which then Alex and I are switching business cards again, because they are studying to do the same thing. Where do we have a vacant lot where I can bring in a home with different developers, or what are the water and sewer conditions that they need to make sure that they are ready? And Benton Harbor right now has a really great water system. If you really clean, good water now. But city-owned lots where they're really looking at, they have gone through and revised some of their ordinances to make sure that they can bring in homes that are smaller and anything else. Alex, what else did I miss?
to mention the preliminary housing study that was done by Hoffman School of Architecture, Professor Sharon Hart, Sharon Hart, who gave her the heart, that they just completed for us. And it basically looks at downsizing the size of the homes, doing some rezoning, which we have going on right now. Our Kalamazoo is doing it for us. And we're going to look at, just as we talked about earlier, taking approximately 500 lots that we have for and bringing them in and where we can continue to own them and make them available to help support and lower the cost of building new homes throughout the city.
So that land bank is another, and that's really a different approach because the city retains or an organization retains the ownership of the land. And the homeowner can build equity, but then owns, when they sell, the city still owns that land and it helps keep that piece affordable. So that, but water, sewer, was one of the things that we said is, has there been a water sewer study to make sure that what lots are available do have water sewer available?
Thank you. Big hand for Lisa. All right, I know Arthur has a hard time speaking on his feet and carrying the message for an entire table, so let's welcome back to the podium Arthur Havlicek.
This is absolutely off the cuff because we didn't even follow the assignment to put it on the correct board. So we started glorifying the problem a little bit, talking about a lot of the barriers as well. Starting with, what is affordable isn't buildable. The cost of construction is just far too high. The amount of affordable product in this market is also a huge problem. No matter where you are, what community you are, there's an absolute lack of that. And then one of the major questions that we dwelt on for a while, probably why we didn't get to the nice whiteboard, was the sort of existential question of, are we building based on who we want to attract as a community? Are we doing a good enough job targeting specific demographics, the type of stock that they are interested in, the type of stock they can afford, and putting it in places, targeting places that they will actually want to locate? Going back to some of the population trend slides and the talent attraction and talent retention slides, if we want people to be able to stay here, to locate here, they need the type of places that are attractive to them. And we need to do that work on the front end in order to be successful in getting them. Similarly, aging families simply don't have enough places to go. So the move up, move down housing conversation is a major issue. We talked a lot about empty nesters being sort of stuck in place. The cost to update homes, it's not just new builds, but so much of our stock is old, dilapidated. The cost to update them and bring them into the 21st century or make them accessible for older generations is prohibitive. Family-friendly neighborhoods, a handful of us have kids, young kids at the table, and we talked about the desire to move into neighborhoods where there are also young kids. In my neighborhood, we were the first ones with kids, a couple more starting to come in, but it's a much older neighborhood, and you want your kids to be able to go out and play, sort of how it used to be. NIMBYism and YIMBYism, I don't know that that's been mentioned yet. I don't know how it hasn't been mentioned yet, but we have a lot of folks in this community that seem to be resistant to anything being built anywhere near them. I think that term is bananas. Build almost nothing anywhere near anyone. Did you catch that? So we need to do a better job about creating a culture of YIMBYism where folks will actually show up to these meetings for development projects, good projects, and say, no, we do need this, and apply that positive political pressure to be able to say, we can change these zoning ordinances, we can achieve more density. All of these are good things in order for our community to grow and thrive and prosper. And then a couple other things, opportunity for wealth building. A lot of young folks, if they're not cohabitating in the same home as their parents, they're moving elsewhere because of the lack or perceived lack of opportunity here from a housing stock perspective. If we were to, again, going back to building what we want to, or who we want to attract, if we're to create options for particularly young people to build equity and wealth right out of the gate, and you pair that with some of the apprenticeship work that's been going on, instead of going and getting a 4-year degree, incurring an incredible amount of debt, you can graduate from high school with a high-paying job, no debt, get right into a home, start building equity. The financial trajectory of that individual's life is transformationally different than probably every single person's journey in this room, myself included. That helps with our talent attraction and our talent retention. But in order to do any of this, we talked a little bit about site readiness, infrastructure costs, and then the availability or lack thereof of certain financial tools, tools for communities, for developers, and for citizens themselves. The state of Michigan is becoming a little more flexible with things like TIF and brownfield for housing, but there needs to be more options, simply put, for folks, no matter where you are in this housing continuum, to be able to afford and purchase and build some equity. So we can translate this onto the pretty board here in a little bit.
You can't really leave until you do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate it. Was there another report out? I think that may have been our groups. Excellent. Thank you. So as we see the conversation surrounding housing, it's obvious that there are barriers, and it's obvious that there are significant opportunities, both kind of in conflict with each other. But you've got the right people in the room, and you've got the right leaders in the room, and the right appointed officials and elected officials in the room to begin to move the needle on these projects. And honestly, the learning done in one community can be transferred very easily and understandably to another. If you prove the model in one, we can move and prove the model in the next. And wouldn't it be something if one of our local municipalities said, hey, we really liked what we did when we changed our zoning to be able to make this happen? You should consider it. But here's what happened that really didn't work for us. So try not to have that happen. I think we can really find some really great opportunities there. So as we think about shifting gears to a different thought process right now, development is still the idea. Housing is still the idea. Riverfront development is the focus right now. But here's where we change, right? We're not going to keep you to a strong grid of framework, but that framework still applies to riverfront development, right? So the idea right now is let's learn a little bit about what's happening in riverfront development already. Let's take a few minutes to see some of that aspiration in two portions of the county that kind of bookend our work together, right? How can we do that? And when you see decades worth of work that's been done in Niles, and you see decades worth of opportunity and work that's done in the north part of the county too, you can see that the St. Joseph River is an amazing opportunity. I wanted to make sure that we looked at those sorts of opportunities, and Rick Huff, the Niles City Administrator, is going to give a little bit about what they continue to see as opportunity for riverfront development in Niles. Just after this, we're going to hear about riverfront development that was alluded to in the St. Joe Charter Township, Benton Harbor, Benton Charter Township area. So this is going to be a really great opportunity. And then it is a free form. What does great look like on our boards for riverfront development? What are the things, if you were able to have the magic wand after seeing these presentations and thinking through some of the thought starters on your instructions, what is great when it comes to riverfront development? What is needed? What does it look like? What do you want it to look like? Obviously, Arthur speaking as a family with young ones, or young one on the way, then soon he's going to be looking at a double stroller. How do I make that work, right? Then soon after that, it's going to be a double stroller and potentially one running around towards a play set or something to that effect on a riverfront, right? So, but what does it look like then from Christine's point, also from an accessibility perspective? Add those thoughts together as you see riverfront development. Let's welcome Rick Huff from Niles.
Thank you. I really got to update that photo on the website, and age is caught up. So, you know, the city of Niles came to the attention of Europeans in 1697 when they said, this is a pretty good place. We got a great river. We have this amazing Native American trail that connects two Great Lakes, who the Native Americans adopted for the mastodons. If you didn't know that, that's the original mastodon migration trail is US 12. And so there are very cool opportunities in Niles. Over the decades, especially the east bank of the St. Joe River within the corporate limits of the city of Niles was industrial. There were button factories, paper factories, concrete plants, gas energy plants, a very industrial riverfront. And in the past, I'd say past 50 years, 60 years, the city has really focused on that riverfront area to try to reclaim it. A lot of those everything on the east side of the river, old commercial establishments are gone. They were demolished. The city acquired the properties along that way. And then now it's about a 3-mile long riverfront park that extends from the southern corporate limits to the northern corporate limits, and also carries the Indiana-Michigan River Valley Trail through it. But there's a lot of opportunity there. And these 4 parcels that I have highlighted here are owned by the city of Niles. They are old commercial properties that the city acquired, demolished the buildings on, and have been holding them for redevelopment. And that's where we've stalled. So the first one here is the old YMCA property. Obviously, it sits on the west bank of the St. Joseph River. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time for those of you who like to follow maps and always think north is up. To make some of these images fit, I had to keep flipping things. So I'll try to keep you oriented. In this particular case, it is up, north is up. So the Corwell Health campus is everything immediately south of that. We've had several developers with some interest in this property. I keep looking back here because I am not one of the professional presenters that we keep having, and it's right there for me to look at. We've had several developers in the past years interested in this, multifamily usually. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially with the Corwell Health campus there, and employee type housing. This is one of the concepts from an interested individual that was on it. It was going to be kind of a mixed use development with a restaurant facing the river there, multi-story, multi-family housing building. Another view of what was being proposed there. We've also had these kind of village concepts proposed to us on the property. So there's always been interest, but it's that gap, figuring out the gap between what they can sell for or what they can rent for and what it's actually going to cost to construct. And that's where the projects just keep stalling. This piece of property is almost directly across the river from that old Y property. It was an old lumberyard years ago. The city owns the green part of that, and private property owners own the other almost half of that block. But I believe the property probably could be bought. This piece of property, amazingly enough, is not in the flood zone. And those of you who have ever driven through Niles during one of our floods and know that the water can actually go 2 blocks to the west, this piece of property doesn't flood, and it's outside the flood zone. So there's a lot of opportunity on that piece of property. We've done some concepts there where we do maybe some mixed use developments, some residential, commercial, vacate one of the streets and create kind of a plaza area there to go along with the theater that's there and tie it into the park system. So again, different concepts, different opportunity that may exist in that location. This particular piece of property has a long storied history. It started out as a gasification plant, heavily contaminated soils. And we worked out a deal with the original owners of that piece of property and the owners of the gasification plant that came back in and did extensive remediation on the property. So it is ready for redevelopment now. So this is directly across the street from the Riverfront Park. There's the theater across the street. There's Indiana River Valley Trail, the skate park, volleyball courts. All those amenities are right there. Make another great location for maybe a mixed use commercial residential type property. This piece of property is the old public safety property. If those of you who ever drove through Niles remember the old police and fire station. sat on this corner. It's about 100,000 square feet, and it is directly across the river from the Corwell Health Medical Campus. And that also, I believe, presents a great opportunity for a mixed use or a large multifamily type development on this location. We've done some concepts, same kind of thing, maybe a mixture of a multi-story, multifamily and village type plan. But then we expanded that plan on 3rd Street in Niles, which was the original US 31 many decades ago, connecting Indianapolis with St. Joseph. So we have been acquiring properties. The city of Niles has been acquiring properties all down this corridor to try to prepare the entire corridor for revisioning of what it could be. Increased density is really our goal. We really need density. We've added about 175 units of 80% or less AMI multifamily housing in the last 6 years in the city. But we need, at this moment, we need 650 middle income houses in the community. Very high need for either some type of higher density housing. And that is it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Rick. So you can see that there's an awful lot happening. There's an awful lot of opportunity and fantastic sort of work that can be done in the future, but it's going to take some time and some effort, right? So let's move to what's happening in the north part of the county and riverfront opportunities. Again, immediately after this, we're going to talk about what does great look like on our whiteboards themselves. And this gives you some concept of what it may be like as we begin to stitch together opportunities for riverfront development. So please welcome Andrew Hahn and Chris Cook, pardon me.
Okay, so speaking of old photos, well, thanks. We're going to have another great discussion. Rick, I'm super excited to have learned more about some of your sites, and I'm eager to roll up our sleeves and hopefully help move the needle on them. And I was surprised, what is it with YMCA sites, right? The one in St. Joe's on the bluff is a YMCA site, and yours. There it is, yes. So we're going to talk just a little bit more about inspiration at the start of this. It's going to be quick. Chris is going to update a little bit on some of the stuff Harbor Shores has done and their vision for how we connect this waterfront and more fully leverage it. I want to show a few examples just to kind of get the juices flowing as we move into this discussion, and then talk about a couple of things we're excited about that will be new news, I think, to this group. So try to look at my picture here. So these are pictures that were not part of the deck I made, but are might be familiar to some of you that came out of the 2016 Harbor Vision document. So those show envisioned development both across from the North American headquarters west, the bottom one there. That is still aggregate storage, but behind it, you can see where Emma Jean Hall Flats is now, along with the plaza that I think you've all heard about, but Chris is going to speak to in a minute. And then there is looking at St. Joe, looking south to the courthouse. And there's been a lot of discussion over the years about, should we move the courthouse? Should we not? This shows that you don't have to move it, but you can really wrap around it with a lot of incredible development and really change the character of that whole area. So what makes a world-class riverfront? And I'm going to show just a few examples from places that I've either been or I'm familiar with, and I think kind of hit some of the components of what that is. So this is Paris, right? It's people. I mean, having something in a place where people will come is so important. And they brought their beach into the urban area. I've not been fortunate enough to go there. I hope some of you have. This is one that I love. This is in Providence, Rhode Island. So it's called Waterfire. So part of it's about just programming that space. It's not just building a pretty place that's empty, but having events, having reasons for people to come together, having those traditions around water. This is a place I have been called Sparkman Wharf in Tampa. And it's a really, really cool mixed use development that has an entertainment venue. It's got like a food truck court, really great green spaces all baked in. You can't see it, but behind there's a battleship that's a museum now. And Tampa has done incredible stuff. I mean, their waterfront is miles long and is well programmed and well developed, and highly encourage a visit there if you ever have a chance. Funny, the rip off and duplicate thing. It looks like maybe Des Moines copied Niles, because I forgot that Niles had a waterfront skate park. But you know, providing amenities for all ages are really important if we want to retain our talent. And we don't have things for kids, so they don't enjoy where they live, they're going to leave. So things like that, you wouldn't think of it. I wouldn't build a full economic development strategy around a skate park, but like, people will go to them. It's a real thing. Detroit is another really good example in our backyard, right? It's a bigger community, but if you've ever been to the Detroit Riverwalk, it is such an incredible space. It is so diverse. There are thousands of people. They look like, I mean, it looks like walking around Manhattan or a global city, right? I mean, it's just incredible. And that has been a years-long effort with the state, with the municipality, with lots of foundations and funders, and it's great. So that's something I could imagine. Maybe we take a delegation and go visit and see what they've done in Detroit. So New Orleans is another one that has a great waterfront, and obviously the St. Joseph River or the Paw Paw River are not the Mississippi, but there's still parallels to be drawn. This was a design out of Milwaukee that actually informed the plaza that is kind of the first public space in many years that has been built or is about to have ground broken on in Benton Harbor. So what about the Benton Harbor St. Joseph Riverfront? There's a lot of, this is something that, you know, the community, and I'm assuming a lot of the people in this room have talked about for decades. This goes back to the 2011 master plan, and it shows, it doesn't contemplate, you know, Whirlpool having a major facility there, but they do now, and it's great. And that has put thousands of people working right downtown. But it shows that there's been this desire to think differently about how we use that asset. We've talked about this a couple of times. We saw those slides earlier. There has been action since this. We want to make sure that this speeds up and goes faster and is more impactful. This was another concept that was done in 2019, that this is facing south, right? West-ish, south-ish? Anyways. So the Whirlpool campus would be on the right side of there, just out of frame. But this is another one that contemplates, you know, what if the space along the river was truly a pedestrian space and a plaza, and it was a place for activity and enjoyment, and you know, not occupied with the road right now. I mean, there's a lot of places, again, Benton Harbor's not Seattle, but there's lessons to be learned from places like Seattle that took their waterfront highways down, that blocked the access to their water. And moving an interstate highway is a lot bigger bite than moving a 2-lane road potentially. So how do we start moving these ideas to action? I think that's important, right? There's been great progress over the years, but we want to move faster and get more done and build that housing and make those places for people to come to. I'm going to hand this to Chris, because Chris gets to be the person who ensures this awesome space continues to serve the community.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So what you see up on the screen is titled Ship Canal Plaza, which is lame. We are currently calling it a much better riverfront plaza and still taking ideas for names for this plaza. But this is the same plaza that I presented at the last summit. We've taken those months to design, bid, submit permits. We're waiting for them. Soon we expect them to come, and then we can start building. But this is a $2 million project right adjacent to the Emma Jean Hall Flats apartments. It is not part of the apartments. The apartment folks will obviously be able to use it. It's on entirely on Harbor Shores land, entirely open to the public. It will have some riverfront access. It's going to have a plaza with a tree canopy, as well as umbrellas, places to hang out, food trucks, fire pits, all that sort of stuff, as well as some artificial turf and grass turf for bag games and other yard games and things like that. So we expect this to be a very vibrant place that the community can come and will be attracted to, and will be a catalyst for other riverfront development. So if we can do this here on this little space, what can we do elsewhere? So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this.
Can you talk to how this would connect west to some of the other parts of Harbor Shores, both that exist and are under or will be under development?
Sure. So, excuse me, I've been battling this frog since I went out to visit my daughter in the mountains, and it was snowing like crazy just the other day. Anyhow, this is on Riverview Drive again, and so it connects right up with what Andrew was just showing with the potential riverfront master plans within the city of Benton Harbor. It's adjacent to Whirlpool facilities. It's also just around the corner from our Harbor Village, Parcel 2, down Graham Avenue where the clubhouse is, and it fits. You can see the central spine of a sidewalk that runs from Riverview Drive to the bridge that was once to nowhere, that is now somewhere, that takes us across the river, Pawpaw River, to Harbor Village. And this also connects up with trail work that has gone on Riverview Drive, and then connects to our entire 8 to 10 miles of trails within the Harbor Village development. So well connected, again, a spot that we think people are really going to enjoy hanging out in, despite the fact that it's gone now from your view.
The next part, the visual, is kind of important. So we'll a little song and dance up here. But
Any questions thus far? Juan.
Suggestions for names.
Yes.
Perfect segue. What about the historic neighborhood?
No, do you know what it is? Oh boy. Probably not that.
Cork and a keg.
Yep.
Well, I will take the blame for the shifting name, and my intent today was to just illustrate where it is. Because at one point it was initially called the Pawpaw Plaza, which it's not on the Pawpaw River. So
What's that name?
yeah, a little too cute.
PPP.
Yeah. What it's gonna be shortened to.
And I heard John a little while ago refer to a magic wand, but it sounded like you said magic wand, which I thought was a slip of the tongue for wand. But.
Well, we may have to just do some visualization and some pretending here. Should I? What do I think the prospects are? So that was the what I got. So that view that I showed a little bit ago, that showed basically the river flowing from left to right, and the Whirlpool campus was on the right, and the middle spot that's kind of undeveloped on Riverview was in the middle, and Charles Yarborough Park was on the end, on the left. So what do we do? How do we start connecting these things all together? And we've had all these visions of, you're gonna draw it all? Look at that. How do we connect them, right? What can we do now? And I think that was part of our strategy on how to start moving this forward. So, when you look at an aerial of that area, I'm first drawn, because it's the biggest feature, to the really, really big parking lot behind the Whirlpool campus. I see opportunity there. And so we've had some good, very preliminary discussions with the team at Whirlpool about how do we leverage that? Can we think about the stuff that is closest to the water? Maybe it's only a 60-foot strip, and actually use that for development. So this is a discussion that's been open. It's one that's been warmly received. So we have some work to do on really figuring out what could go there, what the market will support, what fits best. And the idea is really to take that as the first catalyst. When you look in front of that, between that land or that parcel and the river, there's a park there. It's Fisherman's Park. And it's one that's not used a whole lot. I mean, I've driven by a lot of times, and sometimes I'll see one or two people down there. doesn't have a lot of amenities. It's not very visible. So the thought is thinking about the Whirlpool campus, engaging with our community, working with our partners at the city. We've had some great opening discussions about that, about what a really, really world-class park could look like with Fisherman's Park, and engaging the community so it's their design and their concept and fits all of us and gives everyone a reason to go there. Look at that. There it is. So there's the Whirlpool campus. Kind of, it's like a weird, triangle or something, but here's the parking, and there's the park. So what can we do on this kind of initial part where you can see the water and you're right there and you could look out onto a killer park and have a reason to be indoors and outdoors. And then the last piece of this, what I would maybe call the North Riverview concept, is that Chase building, the Chase Bank building. And we saw a picture of that. It's right next door. There's a party that's starting to develop that, but they haven't figured out what to do is, leveraging that amenity. So look at it. We got a picture. Maybe my picture is not that much better than Chris's though. Actually I got to go back.
Go for it.
So this is my masterful design skills. But if you look at, this is the current campus. This is Fisherman's Park here. When you come across the bridge, you wouldn't ever see that there's a park. It just kind of whizzes right by. So how can you make that an asset that connects into St. Joe and might draw the attention of people? This is my little polygon I drew of what that opportunity site could look like. And then we've had a really great discussion with the owners that have recently purchased that bank property about, what could it look like if there was an easement across that property and there was a public space, so that isn't something where you've got a dead end. So, I've been on some great riverfronts where you're walking and then suddenly you're 2 blocks off the water because there's a marina or some other private use. So that is an early discussion. They were very open to it. So when you start thinking about this, suddenly a third of Riverview Drive could be a lot different and a lot more well programmed and activated and leveraged. So we think those are some of the next steps that we want to take. Chris, if I missed anything, this discussion's early, but we're really heartened by it. So I'm happy to answer questions too, if there's any about this. All right.
All right, thank you very much, and I appreciate Susan and Dolphy getting us back online too, and Mike, I think from Whirlpool, was also helping out. So Mike came in to make sure we reconnected. So you see some of the vision of what can be, or what may be, or what shall be. Now it's an opportunity for each of you in these groups. Quickly grab your boards. In this case, you don't need the hard board. You take this little guy right here, turn over the piece of paper, and start to say, what does world-class access, engagement, it includes housing, I'm sure. It probably includes accessibility. It probably includes boat slips and launches. I don't know. What is it that you think world-class riverfront development looks like? Build that into, if you could make the master plan happen. Obviously, these things have to happen with our municipalities, right, Commissioner? Absolutely. You have to make it work with municipalities and so forth. But let's assume we're able to make it all work together and everybody's all in concert and we agree it's a great thing. Spend 10 minutes, if you would, please. Write down, or 20, or 25, however long it takes to do really great ideas. If you look on your sheets, on the instructions, you will see that there are some prompt questions that follow along in the same kind of concept and idea. Any questions or thoughts? Here we go. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 if we want to get there. And then let's, again, report out for the close of today's great summit. Thank you. Shall we do it? All right, here we go. I thought it was one of those like remember back in the day, remember the one that smelled like grape? I think certainly got it back. Connected to
Well, I don't know. Because I was thinking the hard place and then vaccine was all over. Now I've got around 10. Yeah. Okay. Or both slips, John?
But it's multi-use, right? Like the water draws in the summer, right? And in the winter, you don't want to.
Right. So in the Netherlands, they have the new initiative, and putting down your phones, right? But they have the churches, and they have you pay $5, and you basically have no electronics, music, guitars, games, artwork, and everybody's gathered in the streets of places. And it's taking off like wow. It's a version of the Netherlands, and it's like it's starting to expand all over Europe. And it's great. They're trying to make this work. And they're into this wrestling all races. let's put down electronics and get people back communicating. Yeah, you should check it in, yeah, and you can't, sometimes you're sold out, you can't even walk. So you have to stay all online and bring back there. Yeah, like when was your trip to Miami? So was it great?
Connectivity to trails, huh? You're not gonna build this without being connected. How are you gonna get people in there? Put that up for connectivity, mobility, water taxi, accessibility.
Completely different. I love the one that
Right, and you remember the name? Right.
That is Sinclair. 40 yards. No liability. No liability. Risk management. Risk management. Zip lines across the St. Joe River. Honestly, they did this one side of the building is actually how do I capture you? But is that event ready to be played? I'm not sure. That's exactly the
Makes it more attractive too. So, what are the best communities Paris probably wasn't the best Who's reading it? John, you want to read it? You were chit chat. Who wants to do it? Liz? Come on, Liz. Oh, David? Y'all heard enough from me lately.
All right, 2-minute warning, 2-minute warning. Let's get those great ideas down and we'll chronicle them all later. Report outs in just a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Because I know. Good, got me? What we try to do is all these bodies into that's how so like our thing out here is so is it next to the art and all that. Live in your car or the electronics are
All right, 60 seconds. Let's get those last great ideas out, please. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody taking the time to brainstorm what looks great. As we take a few minutes then to hear from each other, there's obviously going to be some crossover, but what's clear is that if there's crossover, that means there's a high degree of interest in that being a part of what riverfront development looks like. By the way, I think we all can recognize that Berrien County has the St. Joseph River as the major artery on riverfront, right? We can recognize that. Lots of different municipalities exist on that riverfront, may or may not be envisioning any sort of riverfront development. It doesn't end there. In the north part of the county, what do we have? We've got the Pawpaw River that has multiple municipalities then also. In more of the southern portion of the county is the Galeen River. There are 3 river valleys that exist in Berrien County that have all significant opportunities that may or may not match that municipal need or that municipal goal and objective, but may in fact be opportunities for the future. And that's really where we need to think about what stitches this county together in such a way that we can do incredible things. And remember where we started today. We started in some of the demographic challenges that we face, some of the housing needs that we have, the desire for increased population, retaining population, growing population, keeping population, and moving forward. Stitching that all together with riverfront development may be one of those next new things. We just happen to look and focus on the 2 ends of the St. Joseph River. The same can be said throughout the Galeen River and the Pawpaw River also. So what does great look like in this? Let's have some of those report outs if we could. Dave Bunty, it was the group that I had. It's my chicken scratch. If he's got a question, I'll answer it for him. But knowing too that if we hit the same topic again, there's high degree of interest in that being what happens in riverfront space. So with that, Dave Bunty.
Okay, thanks, John. I think our biggest priority is public access all the way along it. Absolutely no blockage. You've got green space or pathways or activity areas is the #1 priority. Connecting to the mobility aspect, water taxi accessibility, again, from the entire neighborhood area. Pedestrian bridges, like the New Buffalo City Harbor area that they've connected a lot more downtown area to the waterfront. Some balance and hardscape to green space, making sure you don't have all this asphalt and concrete, and you've got some green spaces throughout. Mixed use for sure, of course, residential and both commercial. Denser housing uses along the entire space, and then public and open space interspersed throughout that. Performance venue, amphitheater, bringing and drawing and attracting talent and drawing activities and events to the riverfront are extremely important. More boat slips, docking areas for accessibility to restaurants, bars, things like that. People commented, love to sit and watch the water at a bar and drink a cocktail. And then year-round programming and events, making sure it just doesn't fall off the end of the earth after the weather gets bad. Bring out ice skating rinks in places that were potentially just dead spaces. Connecting to the trails, making sure that there's access and connectivity from neighborhoods throughout the area as opposed to just local. ADA special needs accessibility throughout, extremely important. Build the buildings to face the amenities as opposed to the front of the building. The facades are on the street side, making sure the facades are on the waterfront side. An urban beach area. Bring the beach to the area as opposed to people having to go to the Lake Michigan area. Great ideas there. Art features, things like that are draws or attractions. Love the fire thing that we saw with the along the riverfront, something fire related. They just said fire, so you can take that in all kinds of different directions. Zip line between the St. Joe and Benton Harbor. Somebody had that zip line was in where? Where was the community? In Allegan. They did a zip line connecting across the river. Kind of cool, something different. Be unique, think outside the box. Outdoor seating, for sure. Fishing amenities or areas where you can fish very easily. Nighttime lighting. Lighting is such a huge part of any of this development. Ambient lighting, attract. You can do all kinds of things nighttime that is actually a draw to the area and brings people in. Wi-Fi connectivity, of course. Public restrooms, which we all hate, but unfortunately they're a necessity. So, there you go.
All right, who's next? Who wants to report? Yes, come on up, please.
Thank you. So our strategy was, if we are one of the first few groups to go, it sounds like everybody else is copying us. So we went with that. So we thought that, so we think revitalization is very important. So with that, we're thinking a central location, just a common space for everyone to be. It can be a destination spot for those coming outside of town or outside the area, but mostly for our community, just a common space for us to go. But at the same time, we figured that we could also have some themed areas, just because, like, there might be some activities, like multiple activities going on. And I don't think we want like a big garage band going on while we're trying to have a yoga session. So yeah, it's just some themed, I'm just kind of separating that. We do think walkability is really important, including some food, restaurant, shopping, entertainment, social, something, a little bit of something for everybody. We also discussed art. We talked about a phone-free space. One of our group members talked about the Netherlands having, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, what is it? You pay $5 to have your phone locked up, and then you just have like a tech-free time. We value culture. We think that is important to also include. Going along with lighting, we came at it at the angle of safety. So that we can have some evening events going on. And of course, we want the area to be inviting. We too talked about something for all seasons. We want to utilize the water, take advantage of that so boat launches, opportunity for water sports. Of course, it's going to take a lot of planning and promotion. So we talked about marketing and things like that. Accessibility is also very important to us, as well as parking. I know that with water, it can get pretty busy. And so we thought maybe making experience such as a shuttle or a trolley or something like that, getting back and forth would be a good option. Thank you.
All right, I think we've got one more report out. Is that correct? 2? Excellent. Yes, please. Thank you. That's okay. That's all right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Pam and Alex and I worked together to just get some thoughts on paper. Sorry, we didn't use our board. And we're going to just steal all of the ideas because they were great. What we talked about was a little bit more conceptual. I have an echo. Do I sound like an echo? Okay. All of those ideas were great. And what we talked about is we want to take the existing space that we have and activate it. That space is already there. And it's a little bit boring and it's not promoted and it's just sort of sitting there waiting for some love. And so we talked about the High Line in New York City. We talked about Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York City and how they took existing spaces and made them something really special. One of the things that I like about Brooklyn Bridge Park, for anyone who's been there or hasn't been there, is sort of around every corner, there's something a little bit different. So it's not just activated, but it's sort of unique and it keeps you moving. And so if you could take some of those ideas that we've heard and program it so that you want to keep walking and see what's next, that feels like it could be really meaningful. We also talked about connecting Benton Harbor and St. Joe. So as some of you might know, in 2027, we're going to be redoing Main Street in St. Joe. It's also the work will come around and include Port and Ship Streets, as well as the bridge into Benton Harbor. So it's a really great opportunity to add some walking paths or bike lanes or both to sort of connect the two. So as Benton Harbor and St. Joe are both thinking about this, we want to make sure we work that into our plans. And then last but not least, less exciting, I will say that I have a lot of hesitation. I know everyone who talks about St. Joe talks about, gosh, if we could just get rid of the courthouse and the jail, they're on such prime property, we should have development there. I always will, first of all, remind everyone that the city doesn't own that property, it's the county. So we can't just run them off. I know they are thinking about what might happen there, but I also want to stress that they bring employees to our downtown every day and help our downtown to be a year-round downtown. We have employees for both of those. We also have a lot of law firms that are in our downtown because of them. But as you saw from Andrew earlier, we have lots of surface parking lots that are just waiting to be developed. So in terms of prioritization, we do want to be thoughtful. We don't want to run out employees and business from the downtown when we've got other places we're trying to develop. So in the meantime, we've got some ways we can make the riverfront more action-oriented. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emily. And I think we've got one group over here, correct? Andrew.
So we get to go last, so.
You're not last. I forgot. We've got John and his group over here, so forgive me.
Come on, hold tight. A lot of great ideas, a lot that shouldn't be a surprise that we've already heard. The top of ours, much like the top of this group's, was continuous public access. We think that's really important. The idea of a loop. So, people don't always like, whether you're just wandering or you're a runner or whatever, the out and back can be kind of boring. Is there a way to have some sort of circulation on our riverfronts? Connectivity too, right? We talked about parking and having places to park if you're coming to the riverfront's great, but also making sure we're connecting to those nearby neighborhoods and that these assets aren't just for visitors, but they're for residents as well. Sustainable plan for dredging, right? It's the least sexy of all this stuff, but it's pretty darn important if we're going to be a community that's focused on boating and access and that type of tourism. Water quality is something that we heard from the health department that I didn't know was an issue. So I'm glad I wasn't planning on a dip later today, but that's an important thing. Playgrounds, spaces for kids, residential development is almost a given. I think we're all probably thinking about that on these riverfront sites. Some sort of event center, whether that is a small convention center, whatever that might be. It's not something that we have a lot of opportunity for in this county right now. Food, it's critical. I mean, that can be restaurants, that can be pop-ups. There's a lot of ways to do that. Music and performance space, really good fixtures, right? Having really great amenities with your furniture and your lighting, your trash receptacles. Potentially some sort of a maritime focus. When we say maritime, it's the ships, right? St. Joe and Benton Harbor have a history in shipbuilding, and we don't have that big iconic destination type ship that some of the other Great Lakes cities do. Shopping, great events. Someone brought up a social district, great opportunity to wander around and have a beverage. Support for the boating industry. If we're going to have this be something where we're trying to bring boaters, we got to make sure that they can get gas and they can get the parts that they need and whatever else boats need. Transient slips, that's a great thing that we're really sorely lacking. Some sort of an iconic attraction, whether that's visual, but something we can, you're kind of known by. Public art, fitness space. We talked a little bit about peer communities that we could draw some inspiration from. There's some great things going on in Grand Haven. I showed a slide of Paris. We don't have to go across the Atlantic to find a really good riverfront development. It's happening in Grand Rapids. It's happening in Lansing, and all over the state. Lighting installations. The lighting's important for safety and 24-hour access, but also there's some really killer public art that's done through lighting too. Upriver connectivity is something we talked about, and that could be all the way to Niles and beyond. A water trail is something that can be a really easy, that's just a designation, and you're opening yourself up to kayak-based tourism. And then something that came up too, some sort of branding, right? If this becomes a common thread that we have throughout our communities in the county, are we river country? Maybe it's not that, but something that is a branding that we can all kind of come around. I think that was it.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll add one admonition. He mentioned dredging. Emily, City of St. Joe, City of Benton Harbor, St. Joe Charter Township, the three municipalities coming together to work together, Denise, et cetera. Denise was here. I think she's still there. There she is. She's over there. Thank you. Hello, Denise. I know this is something we've talked about for a long, long time. The sooner we are coordinated in terms of being able to accept the regulatory structure to handle dredging, to be able to work cooperatively together in what is not an authority per se, but is in fact the structure that can hold the kind of governmental allowances to be able to do dredging is going to be critical. We know lake levels are low right now, which means river levels are low. We've got a big responsibility heading into spring next year before we hear from all of our boaters again who say they can't reach because of their draw, they can't reach Pier 1000 or Bryan's Marina or the municipal launch in Benton Harbor on Riverview. We need to make sure that we work cooperatively on that. So let's encourage our municipalities to find solutions to that one. Thank you.
Two pitches nobody asked for. One, Dowagiac River, one of Michigan's great cold water, spring-fed trout streams. People come from all over the country to fish that stream. The other is, this is landscape architecture territory. I mean, the question of riverfront development and good design on riverfronts. As a person educated in landscape architecture, getting a landscape architect involved is a great move. So just a little pitch there. I will not repeat anything that's already been said. Market it and promote it. Don't just build it, but also engage in a frequent marketing and promotion strategy. Well-maintained, a plan for maintenance. Don't just build something beautiful, keep it beautiful. Perceive safety, make it beautiful. I want to make an extra pitch for that. Connected to assets, and this is just connectivity was already mentioned. I want to add multimodal transportation in there because among the other connections that's already been talked about, not just connection to vehicular transportation, but bikes, public transit as well. Let's see what else. In addition to amenities, we included parking, but with a caveat. Of course, parking should be in there, but not as a prominent aesthetic feature, but functional. How about that? How about riverfront connection to communities along the St. Joe via a, what was it? It used to be a what? A riverboat. There used to be a riverboat that would connect communities along the St. Joe. That's kind of an interesting idea. Climate sensitivity. These rivers are part of a watershed, and when that watershed floods, you got to manage that water. And to do it and celebrate it makes a lot of sense. Help people to know that this is designed around the nature that we all kind of reside in, and a healthy ecosystem means you design around flooding and that sort of thing. You celebrate it, and with the changing, this extreme changes in water elevation these days, we got to really think about that. Welcome diverse populations, include art. We also, this whole thing about lighting, that was an emphasis for us too. LED lighting, you can do so many fun things with it. A major attraction, night and day, so make it fun. And how about a fish market? Why not? All right, that's it.
Wow, a lot of great ideas. If you think about it, I want to thank everybody for their great leadership here. Our two priorities, housing and riverfront development, I think has been a priority for a long time. And you see this excitement here today. So we appreciate your help. We're going to continue to work on it. As we said, we're going to move forward with our organizational design to facilitate it. I want to thank Pam and Natalie for their leadership on that. Lauren and I have had a great pleasure leading you for the last many years, and we'll do everything we can to help going forward. But most of all, I want to thank the leadership in this room. You've done an awful lot the last 10 years, but I can tell you, when I feel this excitement and I see these ideas and see them develop and get better and better, there's no doubt the next years ahead are our most exciting ones yet. So thank you, and let's get it done. Thank you very much.